Cycling is really, it's just so hard to win any race. It means really so much. The team has really always believed in me through the tough times, and the same with my family. I feel like I've been thinking about this week for the past 4 months already, so it's nice to do it and know that I did everything I could, and it worked out.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Podium. A great day on stage number 8 of Paris to be a fan of American cycling and American cyclists. The stage win going to a flying Magnus Sheffield, the overall to Matteo Jorgenson. An honorable mention has to go to Mads Pedersen, the Great Dane on the Lidl Trek squad, winning the points jersey and going in the breakaway throughout today's stage. Christian Vande Velde, what an exciting day. This stage in Paris always provides thrills and chills, and a great day for Magnus Sheffield, most certainly the stage win today for his Ineos team.
And thankfully, for the first time in a while, no spills. I mean, usually you see a lot of bad spills as well, but, dry roads for the first time. Sun, oh my goodness, sun. First day in 8
Yes.
days, they actually had sun. So it was fantastic. Like you said, though, almost every time we see this race, when we raced it 100 years ago, it's always spectacular, and everyone knows what's coming. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. You either have the legs or you don't have the legs. A lot of times it does come down to some tactics. We saw some fantastic tactics on Ineos, which is a nice change to see. I was starting to question what they were really doing. They're doing a lot of work and seemingly doing it for Matteo. I mean, Matteo had no teammates, and Ineos was so strong at the front and putting Magnus off the front there at a time that didn't really expect it as well. Modern cycling, everyone's expecting the attacks to come on the climbs when you have legs. But if everyone has legs, where are you going to make the difference? And that was in between the climbs. So, I mean, that was a lot of fun to see. I don't think we ever expected to see that happen. I mean, you always hope to see that happen with 2 Americans on the podium yet again in different way than last year when we had Brandon McNulty in 3rd place in the general classification and Matteo winning, obviously. But that was an emotional interview as well. I mean, that yes. I was choked up. I'm still a little bit, just to think of what that kid has gone through, way too much trauma over his young career. It's really nice for so many different reasons, for his team to be up there in the top step again, to see elation that they had coming across the line, winning the general classification for the teams as well for Ineos. And then, of course, Matteo winning back-to-back here against all odds in a brutal 8 days of racing. I mean, this is, it's always bad in Paris, but it's never that bad consistently, I would say. I mean, maybe there's been some additions, but usually when it's that bad, they have to cancel stage, but that was never a case this year. Truncated, but they still had to race, and it was horrible, actually horrible.
Well, yes, it was at least a season worth of drama in 1 week, maybe a whole career. Weather-wise, these riders might not face the same consistent conditions for the rest of the entirety of their careers throughout the week of racing. Magnus's attack, Christian, I thought to myself when I saw it, in the saddle, I thought, well, he's just going to get a water bottle or something on the side of the way, but that was it. That was the last time the field saw Magnus Sheffield until the podium.
Yeah, and honestly, the same thing goes when Matteo went. I don't think anyone was expecting, at least for the GC riders, especially Leipowitz, who's the closest to him in general classification, sitting at 37 seconds at the start of today's race. I don't think he expected to see him go in that uncategorized climb, going up the back of Coldez. So, yeah, I guess that's the way you have to approach these races. Expect the unexpected, always be ready for anything. And as far as psychologically, that's the way that Matteo attacked every day of this race. Being the aggressor with his entire team, and Ineos being at the front there when they split it up in the crosswinds after that gnarly descent, being at the front. You just have to be ready for anything. And with everyone with V12s underneath the hood these days in cycling, where are you going to make the difference? A lot of times it's not going to be on the climbs. It's going to be in between the climbs, the descents, on the flats, and when everyone has their guards down. So, yeah, it was a fun race to watch for many different reasons. I'm so happy. I think we're both happy to be on the other side of the fence when you're calling these kind of races, when these guys have to race in these grim conditions. But again, I think the biggest one, for like you said, it's such a coup for American cycling. Both these kids, going, and they truly are kids. They're still young. Magnus still 22 years of age, be 23 next month. They have Matteo at 25, will be 26 in July, 1st of July, right before the tour starts. These guys have so much career still left ahead of them. I mean, that's the biggest question. What's next for these guys? And especially for the juniors at home, watching these guys who were in the junior ranks not so long ago having so much success, it just really just builds that momentum that USA Cycling has behind it right now.
Cycling is really, it's just so hard to win any race. It means really so much. The team has really always believed in me through the tough times, and the same with my family. I think today we made a really good plan on the bus. We didn't give up. It was try to use the guys on that first climb. It was still 30, 40 guys, but Tobias just said, believe in the plan, boys, don't give up. And Josh was just incredible over the climb. So we just continued with the pace. And then, we had the numbers, so then it was really just about, playing our cards right. And Matteo was isolated, Lipowitz was isolated. So then I told the boys that, I'd go to the back and then I would attack and just not look back. I was able to get across to Mads in that group that he was in, and I knew I was probably stronger than him on the climb. So, I knew that I just had to use him as best as I could on the descent and on the flat, and then just push as hard as I could to the top. And then my gears were shifting and doing all sorts of strange things, and I was a bit worried in that final straight with the headwinds that I could possibly get caught, because again in cycling you never know until it's over. And I'm just so happy and relieved to cross the finish line first.
And you do it almost at home. This is your second home, and you do it in front of Matteo Jorgenson. You started riding with him. He's a friend of yours. It's what a symbol.
Yeah, Matteo. We were never teammates, but we raced for the same junior team, Hot Tubes. And Matteo, he's had his ups and downs throughout his career, and I think him winning today, it just shows what's possible for American cycling, and also for any young kid wanting to start. Unfortunately, I really want to do the best I could in the GC. I'd been preparing really well the past few weeks, and unfortunately, with that cold day that it was neutralized, I really suffered when we were at the cars, and it's unfortunate, but again, you can't ever give up in cycling, and I think that's really what I've learned today. And again, I just can't thank my family enough for always being there for me.
And you're still very young with a very promising future. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, Magnus Sheffield, early in his professional career, it's kind of hard to imagine saying that already, but a big win in a one-day classic called the Brabantse Pijl, announcing himself on the world stage like, I am a rider to reckon with, but it's been a very rough ride for him emotionally and physically, crashing at the same moment that Gino Mader crashed in the Tour of Switzerland a couple years ago, and Gino Mader losing his life, and Magnus Sheffield on the side of the road there. And that's taken a long time to recuperate from. He had some significant injuries himself, but emotionally, I'm sure that was part of the interview where he was overcome by the emotion of what he's gone through in the last couple of years, Christian.
Yeah, I think that all came pouring out, didn't it? And there was a lot of that trauma that he went through, but really talking about his family first and foremost, having his back, and really just talking about the circle that you need around you and the support system that you have. And especially it's such a solitary sport being cycling. How many days you're on the road by yourself, training by yourself, always trying to keep that focus all around. And without that structure in place, it's really hard to have success in life in general, but especially in cycling on a different continent as well. It's one thing if you live in Belgium and you're going to mom's house for coffee and she's making you lunch and things like that, but you're by yourself. And it's a different continent. You're sacrificing so much. You're missing all the birthdays and weddings and all these endless occasions. And so, yeah, I think a lot of, and it's frequent, isn't it? You see, definitely do the Tour de France when riders have the breakout successes and stage wins. How many times we've seen these riders subject to tears, especially since COVID. I think it's been a massive change. The stress of the peloton in general has just risen so high.
I feel like I've been thinking about this week for the past 4 months already, so it's nice to do it and know that I did everything I could, and yeah, it worked out.
You talk about stress, but you really looked in control throughout the week.
I'm glad it looked that way. No, I have to credit my team, really. I was so well supported this week. Today, I was pretty isolated. We knew that was going to be the case without Jonas here in the mountains, but the rest of the week, we took full advantage of having a really strong team on the flats, and just tactically and positioning, and everyone was committed from day one, and that feels really, really good, and I'm just so happy to be on this team and have won Paris 2 years in a row. It's crazy to say that.
And a very American day today. You win Paris. Magnus, with whom you train quite often in Nice, wins the stage. It's like two kids playing in their backyard. Yeah,
it was really cool. Magnus and I were on the same junior team together, and hot tube cycling, and it was awesome seeing him just in front of me. I mean, I was really trying to catch him. I could not get him. And yeah, I'm happy to see him win, and he deserves this stage. I mean, he was really strong all week, and yeah, it's pretty cool. This is turning into American race, I think.
Were there moments where you were at the limit, honestly, today and in the last few days?
Yeah, definitely. Yesterday and on La Loge de Garde, the day Jonas was second, both days I really suffered in the cold for like the first time in my career. I think I may be just a little too skinny right now or something, but the cold was affecting me pretty bad, and yesterday I was really struggling. I even had ski gloves on and had numb hands and feet, so yeah, definitely was not an easy week, and every stage presented its own challenges. I really, took every day like a one-day race, and glad it's over. I'm going to sleep for a good week here in Nice.
Last question, is the Matteo Jorgenson 2025 better than the 2024 version?
I'll let the public decide that.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you.
Congrats.
And when Matteo said in his post-race interview, what does this feel like? And first thing he said was relief. Not necessarily elation or anything like that. It was relief because you put so much onto yourself that when it's finally over, you're like, thank God it's over. And then you can, in hindsight, you can think, okay, now I'm happy. But right, the first thing you feel, it truly is relief. And I've had the privilege and luxury to talk to both those riders. Everywhere from choosing guys to represent them in contract disputes, not disputes, but negotiations, teams, with Magnus deciding whether he's going to go to UAE or Ineos, and same thing with Matteo walking through the pluses and minuses about going from Movistar into Visma, a juggernaut squad, and maybe questioning whether or not he's going to be able to ride for himself. Obviously, we all know the story and how that played out now on both sides. So it's really fun to see those guys progress and how quickly they progressed as well. It didn't take 5 years for them to really get their footing. I mean, it was almost immediate with Matteo switching over from Movistar into Visma, what we saw last spring. And the same thing with what we saw with, of course, Magnus, like you mentioned, with Brahma Zapata winning there, and then having the trials and tribulations, getting back on his footing yet again. So both these guys, and Will Barta did a fantastic. We didn't even get to talk about Will this week. He was top 20 in the general classification. He lives in Nice as well. He was great. Nielsen Powell's, unfortunately for him, he's one of those riders who really suffered in the cold, never able to get the engine going again. But considering the quality of the 4 American riders that we had in it, they did an incredible job. So a lot to crow about, at least for American cycling.
So for Matteo moving forward, probably going to take a while to, like you said, take it all in and then start to enjoy it, maybe starting this evening with friends and family at his house in Nice. That has got to be pretty cool. So I'm pretty sure the joy will start to come into his emotional imagination in the present tense here pretty soon for Matteo. But yeah, like you said, just relieved to have all the stress behind him now and to deliver, by the way. And so I can imagine that 4 months ago, Matteo said that he's been thinking about this for a long time. But when it was announced, this is a long time ago, that Jonas Vingegaard would be joining the team for Paris-Nice, it would be easy for Matteo to say, okay, I'll just do the teamwork, look at different objectives further on in the year, take all the pressure off of myself. Matteo, a great champion, is able to keep that tension for the entirety of the event, no matter what happens to anybody, including the GC rider for the Visma squad, his own teammate, Jonas Vingegaard, who's won the Tour de France twice, by the way.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, you come into this, at least on paper, you're thinking that, well, Matteo's going to have to work for Jonas. But he, again, the simplest way is always what Matteo says a lot, and I always really embrace, is just the only thing you can do is control your own controllables, right? Control the controllables, control your own destiny. And he was aggressive from stage one. If you think back, what seems like 5 years ago, last Sunday, he was already going for the bonuses, wasn't he, Bob? He was very aggressive, right? Giving himself the opportunity just in case, if there's something to slip up with Jonas's teammate, let's just see, I'm going to keep on pushing hard. It's always a good plan B. And obviously that came to fruition with his teammate crashing hard. And we haven't heard too much about Jonas. Hopefully he's okay. But he seemed like he was over it regardless. He was saying after he got second place at the João Almeida that the stage should have been canceled. It was very unlike him for some of the sound bites we hear. He's a true warrior. And obviously after his crash, still battling to stay in second place in the overall with possibly a broken wrist. We haven't heard anything about that since then. But he had a big tumble. So anyway, it was, if you really think back of the way Matteo started this race, he was very opportunistic, let's just say, right from the get-go, and giving himself all the possibilities to go forward and trying to get another GC win here at Paris-Nice.
Well, Matteo going for those time bonuses, and then in the team time trial, going into the leader's jersey, that's a huge difference in the team meeting in the stages moving forward. He did surrender that to his teammate Jonas just for a short period of time, however, and got it back, and that was lights out for everybody else in the bike race. But you're absolutely right. I had forgotten about how aggressive Matteo was. So obviously has a green light, but that's a different story than actually having the fortitude and the talent to keep going for it. He did every single day of this race. Very impressive. Last year, he was strong. Last year, going into the last day, he looked pretty solid, but I didn't think he was going to unseat Brandon McNulty, who was flying last year. And of course, it suits McNulty to a T. But Matteo Jorgenson, a rider to reckon with, a formidable character. And like I said during the coverage, an absolute joy for Visma to have him choose their squad, basically.
Yeah, no, I almost had the same exact conversation with Franz Massa, and he's like, "Oh, we're just so happy for our American boy." I mean, you talk to anyone else in the team, or talk to Franz about anyone else on the team, and he's not even nearly as ecstatic as he is when he's talking about Matteo. So obviously they're psyched about him, and they probably have a fantastic contract on both sides for him going forward. But I don't think even in their wildest dreams could they ever thought, when they signed him over from Movistar, that he was going to have the success or help with the success of the team as much as he has. I mean, you think about what he did top 10 in the Tour de France, how much he was at Jonas's side, being one of the last riders every time in the mountains as well. But, you talk about the difference between 2024 Matteo and 2025 Matteo. This was a harder stage race as well, without the weather. You're thinking about the finishes, the summit finishes, and how much harder the last couple of kilometers were at so many different stages. And Matteo's a big boy. I mean, he's not a pure climber. He's just a very strong man. I mean, he's 6'3". He's his shoulders are twice the size of some of the guys he's climbing with. He looks like a linebacker. So I'm excited to see his form going forward into the classics. Wout has not been the Wout of old yet. I mean, he's still clawing his way back into that form. I think he might even be in a leadership role going into some of these classics. He'd be a danger rider going into Tour of Flanders, for example. I mean, who knows what he could do up there? So, he kind of fizzled out last year. There's so much
more pressure than usual. And he had such great form early in the season last year, where he was just pretty much on fumes when it came to the last couple of classics. And this year, I think the way he positioned himself in that long training camp, let's not forget, he only came into this race with 2 days of competition. That's nothing for most of these riders to be able to sharpen his tools. And he just got better and better. So I think his form might even increase, as scary as that sounds, going forward. If he takes a nice rest here, which he says he's going to sleep for a week, which, I think everyone deserves a week of sleep after going through what they just did the last 8 days.
Absolutely. Mads Pedersen also had another mind-blowing day and stage number 8 to go for the intermediate time point sprint. 10 points. He started the day 7 points ahead of Matteo. He knew Matteo might win the stage. That would give Matteo another 15 points. So he had to get maximum points. Second on that sprint would not have cut it for Mads Pedersen. That's one thing, to know what you need to do, but to be able to do it, what a great ride. And that definitely has to bode well for Mads Pedersen in the classics upcoming.
I mean, in hindsight, he could have done it with a lot more ease if he just stayed in there and went with those moves going over the Côte d'Épée, for example. But, oh my goodness, first of all, he was the first rider to attack today. From the drop of the hat, he was the first guy going off the front. Several attacks. I counted at least 7 or 8 that he was a part of. And then they brought them all back together when Ineos was driving hard on the Côte d'Épée, the first climb. And then he attacked over the top of the climb on the descent, put a minute 15 by himself. And it really was mind-blowing what he did on the heels of what he did yesterday, getting a 10th place finish on a mountaintop. I mean, the Queen stage, say what? So, he's another rider. Same kind of conversation last year. If you think about the form that he had in Paris-Nice and the first couple of races in France, the year which he kind of fizzled in the classics. You have to really think about when you need to be on peak form. And so I think they're really going to have to really look at where you want to go, how you're going to recover in your training going forward after this race, because you don't want to pull back too far. And especially after this, there's going to be a lot of riders getting sick. That's just the nature of the beast. After you've been racing and your immune system is just beaten down like a redheaded stepchild, now you have to think about training again to get the body moving and ready to go to be in full flight in the classics.
Well, Mads Pedersen had a great day, a great week. Even yesterday, having to switch his mentality when his GC rider, Mateusz Gelmos, crashed in the opening miles and was able to instantaneously switch his mentality to getting points at the top of a Category 1 climb to finish off in the snow. Maybe that was a little bit of an advantage, but then to go back on the attack today, I cannot say enough about how Mads Pedersen rode and what a great champion is. And I hope the people of Denmark appreciate what he was doing throughout this week's race for all the Danish fans of cycling, which is just about the whole country, Christian.
The market share when we started the Tour de France in Denmark was insane. I mean, it's almost like every television was on, if they're actually home, and everyone else who wasn't home, they were at the race. They were
at the race course. Yeah.
So going forward with everyone else, I mean, the other big storyline I would say would be Michael Storer. Winning yesterday's stage, getting himself into the top 5 in general classification for an invited team to be able to get a stage, the Queen stage, and top 5. When you think about the riders, he was ahead. And you think of the budgets those guys and the salary that those guys got, like João Almeida, some of the other UE riders, it was a big one for them. And showing off to the ASO for them to hopefully get a wild card in the Tour de France. I mean, most likely go to maybe one of the lesser Grand Tours, the Giro or the Vuelta. But I think obviously everyone wants to go to the big show, and there's only one big show. And that's the Tour.
Well, speaking of the Tour and speaking of Beyond the Podium's upcoming, we'll see everybody. Congratulations to Matteo Jorgenson and Magnus Sheffield and all the riders, by the way, that finished Paris-Nice. And Christian Vande Velde, thank you so much for elucidating me throughout the week's race. Can't wait to work with you again. Take care. You got the big watch. Now you can go and get some miles on the bike, perhaps for yourself.
Can't wait, buddy. See you soon.
All right. Thanks, Christian. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
For all your cycling content year-round, subscribe to NBC Sports YouTube page. We got it all.